how can you make us feel better? How can you make us feel safer? Other than the open carry, how can you help us if
Well,
you're
that's
elected?
how you can make yourself feel better.
If you're elected mayor, what can you do? What is it?
Well,
that,
these things come to bear, like with the SCAP, which I think we're going to be talking about very
right?
soon.
Yes.
They come to bear with SCAP was very interesting because I followed it from its inception.
Now,
because it
SCAF.
affected the airport district. That was based on stimulus dollars.
Before we go any further, let's go ahead and explain what SCAP is. It's the Stanislaus Community Assistance Project.
Right.
And it was instituted to help homeless and infirmed and maybe people who had a loss of income of some sort.
Yeah.
So it was a nonprofit organization that was set up to basically help the needy people in our community. So with that being said,
Yeah, well, with that being said, it would be also important to point out that this was set up to facilitate basically 3 rounds of funding that came through HUD, Housing Urban Development,
to help
through
them
the
with
federal
housing.
government, and but in such a way as like our community television, there was a nonprofit that was set up just to administer our local community television. There was a nonprofit set up for our largest rec center, for the youth, et cetera, community center in Modesto, the King Kennedy Center. There was a nonprofit specifically set up for that. So with SCAP, this was a nonprofit that was specifically set up to handle buying homes and renovating them. And when it was first set up back in 2005, when it first started coming on, and I was advocating very heavily for it. And it was basically matching dollars that we would present from property taxes, and the city council voted to apply for this grant. The first round, which was $8 million, which is a lot of the money that is actually being talked about now, that was going into the homes, that were luxuriously spent on now. But the city actually had housing rehab specialists. It had housing rehab specialists 1 and 2. There was about 20 of these positions. But conveniently, when the city needed to cut staff, these positions became cut, and it felt like it was better if they got an outside, take that word very lightly, nonprofit together to handle this. But unfortunately, with several city council members had connections with just a very few, like with 2 to 3 companies, Trinity Ventures, Benchmark, and these all tied with, kind of like the Illuminati, with Joe Murator on Marsh. Joe Murator is a direct partner in one of the companies that was in the restoration scale.
well, actually, now that you bring up Garrett Marsh and Brad Hahn, they're going to be coming on the show, and hopefully I can schedule something with Garrett Marsh soon, but Brad Hahn will be here in a couple weeks, so hopefully he'll be able to answer some of those
a lot
questions.
More key as far as the Illuminati, I'll be the one.
Well, well, I think that he probably has a lot of information that will be helpful to the public for the answers that, for the questions that we're asking. We want some answers for that. So concerning SCAP for you, though, you were peripherally involved with them a few years ago.
Right, I've been a factor in for the airport district.
Right. But as potential mayor, this is a fiasco. I mean, it's just a fiasco because there's been allegations of, misappropriation and people acting untoward toward the needy and that sort of thing, putting a top priority on other people who either are family or friends or employees, something like that. So if you're elected mayor, okay, here's the question. If you're elected mayor, what are you going to do about SCAP? Is it going to be on your front desk and say, I'm going to get to the bottom of this and we're going to find out where this money went, if there was any wrongdoing, if somebody needs to be prosecuted?
If I was, well, I'd be for the DA. I mean, if I was to be mayor, I think a lot of these questions would already be answered by that time because I'd be inaugurated, if there's no runoff, I'd be inaugurated in January. But I think...
And what's a runoff?
A runoff is when the 2 highest, if nobody gets 50% plus 1 vote,
Okay.
then there's a runoff according to our city charter,
Okay.
which is what guides all the things of the Modesto. It's kind of like the Constitution of Modesto.
Okay.
But with SCAP, I think I would have no choice but to try to look at it as positively as I could, as an opportunity to use it as a weapon to teach.
Okay, I was going to say, how are you going to make that into a positive?
No, it can be made. We must learn from our mistakes. See, if we learn from our mistakes, that's the best positive we can do.
Because I've heard that there are a lot of nonprofits that aren't anywhere near what SCAP is doing.
Yeah, what do you mean as far as?
I mean, as far as like, they're not coming under any kind of scrutiny, you know, they're just running along and they're doing a great job.
Some of them really don't have to, you know, like Haven House is a real good example. I mean, well, for all I know, maybe the director is like embezzling or something, but, you know, but I mean, it's like, you know, it's Hutton House, it's another good, it helps runaway teens, these different things. But see, with SCAP was specifically set up specifically to funnel millions of dollars through housing rehabilitation, which means restoration. And we have so many conflicts of interest with the city council in these restorations. It's just the money was, I believe that, you know, everybody knew about it all along. I certainly did, you know, and I'm, you know, not really that involved, you know, and I mean, you know, certainly not. But it's just, you know, from asking the questions like, well, you know, where's my rec center? Where's my rec center for 7 years?
Yeah, yeah.
But it's, I believe that it can, you know, show that, like you say, like we had the YMCA. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't.
Well, we had a YMCA. It was we had it for years, but there was never any audits. Nobody noticed it until it was too late. And now we lost our YMCA. Which might not have been that great to begin with, but it was something. I'm sorry, I just keep thinking of the village people.
Well, we only have a couple minutes left, and I don't want to waste that time just chatting about SCAP. I want to really focus on the last 2 minutes. Tell me what it is that has your heart and passion in this race.
Truth. I'm the only one that's running that has nothing to gain other than selfless things. Because every single reason that I mean, I wouldn't run unless it was for what I was doing and advocating for and the things that I want to see happen. And a lot of the things are social issues. Now, the Modesto Bee said in my last race that, you know, the things that I cared about weren't addressed by the council. But now we've seen SCAP, we've seen the Blue Ribbon Homeless Commission, which is trying to criminalize the homeless. All these things come to the forefront, which were the things that I'm directly involved in, that I'm advocating for, the worst of the worst.
Well, you have a website. Before we go off the air, can you tell us what that website is? If it has a phone number, go ahead and please give us your phone number, and, you know, just give us all your information so the people who do want to support you have a way of getting in touch with you and putting your signs in the yard.
Right.
Or posters in the window, whatever you have.
My phone number is available 24 hours a day. I'm on call. Area code 209-404-8884. And my office address is 1325 Yosemite Boulevard, Suite A. And my website is Stanford, the number 4, Modesto, or you can just Google if you dare. Stanford, Modesto, and Google. Just don't believe the bad stuff, because there's bad stuff. It's just not on the internet yet. But
so Stanford for
very,
Modesto?
very accessible on the internet.
.com?
Yes.
.com. Okay.
It's Stanford for Modesto is pretty much the key. You can go to Facebook.
Okay.
Stanford for
that's
Modesto,
right. You're on
join me there.
Facebook
Yeah,
too.
I'm on Facebook, Twitter.
Okay. And thank you very much for joining us, Chance.
You're
We'll
welcome.
hopefully have
My
you back
support.
again. Yeah. And thank you, Robert, very much.
Thank you very
Again,
much.
Robert Stanford for Mayor for Modesto. Thank you for joining us at Channel 23 on Watch News. I'm Athens Abell. Thank you and good night.